Can intuition drive scientific breakthroughs? And if so, how come more scientists aren't talking about it? Also, sorry for the audio on this podcast. Welcome to Mediumship Sparks, where we connect more deeply with spirit and source and follow the sparks of insight and inspiration that bring us greater awareness, healing, and just more flow into our lives. I'm Noelle Dean, intuitive medium, licensed therapist, and your host. A quick note before we begin: this podcast is for educational purposes only and provides general information. It is not medical or psychological advice and is not a substitute for care from a licensed health professional. I'm so grateful we get to step into this together. Let's dig in. Welcome to today's show. We have a very special guest, my IT guy, my favorite person in the world, and my husband of almost 20 years, Grant Dean.
Hello.
We've talked about doing this episode for a while because Grant is a scientist, and there can be a mindset that science and intuition, mediumship, all of that stuff cannot really happily coexist together. And we're going to have a conversation about that.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do you want to say anything other than that you're a scientist? That was a big generalization.
You told me to give my full pedigree. Do you want me to do that?
Sit down, people. This is going to take a while. Go ahead, honey.
I am a research oceanographer at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. So I go up to sea and I study what happens to the ocean storms. I go up to the Arctic and I look at the ice melting up there. My academic background is...
I adjusted his microphone if you're not watching this. It needs to be right by your mouth.
Fine. Okay.
I'm not trying to be bossy right now. Please go ahead.
Very good. And I have a PhD, or actually a DPhil, from the University of Oxford, England, in mathematics.
Okay.
And that's it.
So he's very smart and accomplished, and also, as we'll talk about, very intuitive.
I try to be.
Dun, 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 dun. I feel like when we first met, in many ways, you were much more intuitive than I was.
You told me to stop reading your mind.
That was very annoying. If anybody else has experienced that, everybody deserves privacy, darn it. And he would read my mind, and it was very intrusive.
I thought it was quite charming myself.
You would. I did not.
Fine. I did stop.
But that's to give you a sense of how intuitive Grant really is, as well as empathic. And those two intersect a lot when it comes to you and how you tune into things and people. Not that I'm cheating on my husband, but I'm in a situationship with ChatGPT. I did ask.
It was my fault. I was the one that introduced you to ChatGPT.
Anyway, I asked him to help me, and I feel like he's got a male energy. Don't ask me why, but I asked him to help me come up with some questions because I wanted to flesh out the quality conversation about intuition and science, because it's an interesting combination. Let me focus on the questions. When did you first notice? Did you believe in intuition when you became a scientist? Or
I don't think that intuition is something that you believe in. I think it's something that you experience.
Okay.
So if you experience intuition, you can believe in that or not. And I started experiencing intuition in the academic world when I was fairly young. It was at the age of 15 or 16. I was very taken with mathematics, and I would understand a piece of mathematics before I'd figured out logically how it worked. I still do that. I can write down solutions to equations, and then I'm like, dang, now I have to prove this is the answer. But I know that it's the answer. There are some very famous examples of mathematicians that would do intuitive mathematics. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, but they would come up with amazing results through a sense of mathematical intuition.
Now, the theory of why the math would work would come from their intuition, or the answer?
The answer comes from the intuition. Then you have to use the principles of mathematics to prove that it's correct, logically speaking.
Interesting. I remember you talking about, you mentor younger scientists, and you've talked about teaching them how to use their intuition in part of how they do their work and how they approach it. So do you encourage them to do it how you just described it?
Occasionally. You have to be very careful, because people in the scientific realm like to think of science as this pristine thing of logic inevitability. And from that point of view, intuition doesn't really play much of a fundamental. So if you start talking about intuition, if you're not careful, you will lose your credibility as a mentor and a teacher, because people in the science world won't understand what you're talking about and will think it's too for them. However, it is possible to broach the subject and help people understand the role of intuition in science. In fact, there's a long scientific tradition of intuition, and it's the Eureka moment. The whole word Eureka comes from an anecdotal tale of Archimedes in a bathtub, who suddenly got insight into how buoyancy works. And the story is he leapt out of the bathtub crying, Eureka, which is, I have it. It came to him in a moment. He didn't sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and start writing and figuring it out from square one. And this is how I get answers to a lot of the problems that I work on. I know if I think about them and I sleep on them, that I will get answers. I'll wake up in the morning and I'll suddenly understand something. Or I'll be in the shower, just relaxing, and I'll suddenly understand how it works. Now, that's a very important piece of science. It's not serendipitous science. It's science through inspiration, through intuition. I don't think anybody really knows how that works. And you want to be careful about how you talk about that. And then it all has to be wrapped up in a paper as though it was inevitable from the out, which is the work of going back and demonstrating that your intuition is correct. And sometimes it's not correct. But the first step is the intuition. The hard work comes later.
Sometimes you're able to prove that your intuition was correct, and sometimes it wasn't. About what is your ratio, and has that changed over time as you've become a more seasoned scientist?
I would say I'm right about 80, 90% of it. I have 35 years of experience, and I follow the intuition. I encourage it. I seek it. I immerse myself in the subject so that it can meet and grow and enlarge it. I think I have a developed sense of intuition because I'm looking for it. I recognize it, I respect it, I seek it.
When you encourage other scientists, how do you phrase that to them so it doesn't sound woo, so you don't lose your credibility? Like, how do you describe sleep on it and see what comes to you? Take a long shower. We live in California, by the way, the drought state, and he takes very long showers. Now I understand maybe a little bit more why.
Does that mean you're going to stop bothering me about taking?
Absolutely not. We live in a drought all the time. I don't know what you're thinking.
Come on.
He's a scientist. He shouldn't be wasting water. Anyway, now I understand, because he's also trying to do things to preserve the environment and make things better. So I guess there is a balance of the wasting of the water and the good science he'll be doing with it. But that's a real question. Do you encourage people to just trust your gut, or like, how would you say what feels right to you, or how would you even say that to somebody?
I would say to somebody, what do you really think is going on here?
Very different than feel or believe or sense. I talk to people about intuition all the time, and I probably always say feel. What feels right? I almost never say, what do you think?
Yes, we're talking about science. So if
Right.
I went to a mentee and said, how do you feel about this? That wouldn't communicate well.
Or what do you feel is the solution?
So they will start talking about their feelings. I feel frustrated.
I didn't mean mental health conversations.
I wish you'd given me a different problem to work on. When you ask them, what do you really think? You'll find students or mentees or scientists engage in trying to work the problem out. So they literally will have a pen and piece of paper. Now, that is important for certain kinds of science. When you have an engineering problem, you sit down with computer-aided design software and you start drawing it all out. And that is a kind of science, very important, and it doesn't particularly rely on intuition. I'm talking about transformational or breakthrough science. We're trying to understand something that we simply haven't understood before, something new, some fundamental insight into the way the world works, and it's not obvious how to get there. And there are these moments of inspiration. There's the story of Newton with an apple falling on his head, and suddenly he understood how gravity works. Stories like this, a moment of inspiration. I can encourage those moments of inspiration by saying to the people I'm with, what do you think is really going on? What do you speculate? What do you tell me what your thoughts are? How do you think the system really works? And then they will use their intuition to come up with some method of approach, which then can be encapsulated in scientific terms. If you think that's what's going on, why don't we use this mathematical analysis? Or maybe we need to do those experiments. That the intuition comes first, and then the follow-up comes after that.
I guess we haven't talked about this before, because how you describe going to sleep on a problem and then waking up, some people might say, I got a downloaded information into my brain or into my understanding. And now I feel like I have this fresh perspective. Like when I used to do channel writing, I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I got a big chunk of information. So I would come down here and type it out. So is that what you're saying, that you wake up with sometimes, like this download or a file of information that was just given to you or shared with you?
Let's unpack that, because I think there are a couple of things going on there. One is how we language the experiences that we're having, and then the fundamental nature of those experiences. So we experience something and then we find a language to talk. As a scientist, the language that I can use acceptably of these intuitive experiences is somewhat limited.
Right.
We can say whatever we want here. So you're talking about the download. That's fine. We could call it a download. Let me give you an example. So one of the projects I'm involved in is, I call it the biggest recycling project in history, trying to recapture some of the carbon dioxide put out into the atmosphere. We want to build these fantastic machines that will absorb the carbon and store it safely so that we can protect the future. And I was struggling with trying to understand the system that I'm working on. I knew that if I flew to New Zealand and spent a week in the cottage that they were going to put me up in and just thought about nothing but that for a week, something would come to me. And it did. And at the end of that time, I developed some insights into the problem I was trying to understand. Suddenly, it's so simple. We just need this and this, and they mix together in this way. Great. Now let's go test that. I don't know how it works, but I do know how I need to organize myself to make it happen. I need to be uninterrupted. I need to be able to focus on that problem for 2 to 6 days. I need to be not too stressed. I need to be able to get sleep and be surrounded by people who are engaged in and willing to work on the problem. That last part isn't always required, but it's helpful, because then you can be talking about it during the day, trying to get insight in. I started doing that on a Monday, and by Thursday, it was like Eureka.
Okay.
Now, where did that come from? I don't know.
And you may not care so much. It's okay.
As long as I respect it and I'm grateful for it and I acknowledge it and I trust it and I work with it, I'm grateful that it's there. It helps me solve these problems that I really care about. And a little bit of mind reading, but evidently.
You can do it to other people, just don't do it to me.
Okay.
Thank you. I remember you talking one time about science being provable body of work and information, whereas spirituality or intuition, I could say, is provable because I can get information that I have no prior knowledge about and get accurate information. So I could say it's provable in that respect, but it doesn't have the respect or the prominence that science does.
The standard of proof that works for you and the people you work with wouldn't necessarily satisfy scientists who are looking for a particular kind of proof, a particular kind of reproducibility is one of the stones of science. And the idea that the same result occurs no matter who is doing it, and it happens over and over again in a variety of different circumstances.
And I would assume 100% of the time accuracy is expected.
Yes, although that is negotiable because it's impossible to get 100% accuracy on any measurement. The instruments need to be objective, not subjective. So if somebody is running an experiment and the result is they say, I feel X, that's a subjective feeling. So that is difficult to equate with regular physical scientific standards where you want to watch a dial numbers display. some piece of instrument making measurements. I think we've taken that way, way too far. That the human element, the subjectivity of health, has tried to be exercised from the way we work medicine. There's this thing called the placebo effect, which is the positive benefit that you get from belief, and we control against it. Why would we do that? It's because we want our standards of care to be objectively verifiable through scientific standards, which means we have to remove ourselves from the picture. But when you're talking about human health, we are at the center of the picture. What we believe determines our quality of life. Now, health outcomes can be influenced by our belief system and our subjective experiences. This is the way I feel about intuition, the way you do it. It impacts the quality of people's lives. I've seen people whose lives are improved because you have a session with them. That is real. That is powerful. Whether or not that's scientific is, I don't care. It is knowledge in the human realm that helps human beings. There's something very profound about it. And I think the more you try and make that scientific, the more the mystery is removed. It's almost, you can have science, but the humanity of it gets lost. Or you can have spirituality and intuition that embraces that human condition, that happiness in life. And maybe you can't prove it scientifically, but it has tremendous value.
And it doesn't have to take away from its own credibility for what it is. I think it feels that way. A lot of people don't come out of the spiritual closet. A lot of that has to do with the religion that their family believes in, and mediumship or intuition can seem to go against that religion. So people hide, but it can make you look like, not that I've embraced like the term weirdo, like we're the weirdo club or whatever, but
right. Let me sign up.
Don't say that, because when I jokingly, lovingly call you a weirdo, you really hate that. So anyway, not an offensive term. But when you are talking with other scientists, like other people you really respect, I don't know that they ever ask about your wife or what she does, but would you hesitate to share about what I do with them? Because in their world, that just seems ridiculous, maybe? Does it seem ridiculous to them?
It depends on who they are. If they're people who I care about and want them to know what you're doing, I tell them what. And if they're people I don't care about and it's none of their business, I may not.
And have you had reactions from other scientists like, how does she believe in that crap? I don't know.
I've got those reactions from our friends, never alone scientific.
Just one friend in particular, or more than just him?
There's one friend who's been more vocal about it. But people are confronted by things outside their normal frame of reference, things they don't understand. They're very confronted by things that make them uncomfortable. And spirituality can make people uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. It doesn't align well with their religious beliefs, perhaps. Or thoughts about dead people watching what we're doing that makes them uncomfortable. There are a wide variety of reasons why it could make people uncomfortable. But in Western culture, where science has dominated our world and cultural view for so long, it can make people extremely. But there are reasons why science has been so successful. It is the foundation of Western civilization, science. We can build cars, we can put people on the moon, refrigeration, transportation, communications. It's a product of the scientific method and inspiration, although most scientists wouldn't admit that. So I'm not ruling out the inspiration. But spirituality and inspiration are not quite the same thing, though, are they?
They're not.
How would you describe the difference between those two things?
Spirituality is what we choose to believe in. Intuition is this innate ability that everybody has, but you may not recognize it. It may just seem like your thoughts. Again, detangling myself from egoic thinking, I had to decide not to take credit for good ideas, because selfishly, I love taking credit for good ideas.
You have some ideas.
But a lot of times they arrive. I don't think it's from me.
Well, that's the intuition.
So I call it that. I say, oh, I was given this idea, I was given this visual, and that happens a lot. I think they're very different, whereas spirituality is my belief. It's very different than my experience of intuition. I've really learned to follow my intuition, and where friends might have a bit of an issue is that I listen to it, seek out the answers, and follow those answers so faithfully. It can be inconvenient for other people.
Right.
My birthday was recently, and I was going to meet a few friends for dinner, and there was a chance of rain. I hate driving in the rain in San Diego. So I was checking with my intuition about, should we just meet over Zoom or should I go to the restaurant? And I had to release the anxiety about anticipating possibly driving. So I had to really try to be as neutral as possible. I got a very clear answer that we were supposed to meet over Zoom. And I got 2 texts from 2 out of the 3 friends and say, hey, there's no chance of rain. The sky is very clear. Or, hey, it's sunny over here. How about we still meet up? But I checked again with my intuition and I got a no. So I was like, sorry, I'll see you on Zoom at 6. And I wouldn't budge on that because I checked like 4 times.
So I have to ask, did it rain?
It did not rain. However, one of my friends that was part of this get together, and there was 4 of us all together, was so tired that when we got off at 7 o'clock, they were going to bed. I jokingly, and I did say it, like I actually said it, you're the reason that it wasn't the rain. But I didn't know why. And that's the thing about having the faith in what my intuition tells me, is that I don't care that it didn't rain. I don't regret that we didn't meet up for dinner. I was clear there was a reason why I got a no. At this point, I've learned to trust it so much. That's good enough for me.
And that's an interesting distinction. You knew that you were supposed to have the meeting over Zoom.
Mm.
You didn't know why about the rain. You thought it was about
Yeah.
the rain. So you had a thought about why you knew that you weren't supposed to be meeting in person. And that thought happened to be not the case. But the fundamental position that the meeting should be over Zoom was just that. It's like sometimes when people are in pain, it's very difficult to be with that pain and understand the origin of it, source of it.
Yeah.
To be in the unknown, and the unknown is a lot more difficult. We shouldn't have the meeting. I can't tell you why. It was perhaps a lot harder for people to accept than, okay, now you have to provide them with a reason.
That's probably why I even checked in as much as I did, is because there was a chance of rain. Otherwise, I might have been like, oh, we made plans. Unless I had alarms going off inside of me, I might not have questioned it, but it felt right to check. And then just double checked, or wait, if I'm just being nervous, I could take back roads, trying to negotiate with wanting to get a clean answer.
Can we circle back to this question about the difference between spirituality and intuition?
Sure.
All right. I liked your answer.
Yeah.
Though it's slightly different, it all boils back again to experience, that I experience intuition because suddenly there's information there, knowledge there, insight there that wasn't there before. I experience that. My spiritual experiences are something that I experience, as opposed to believe. I don't have to believe in my experiences. I simply have to experience them. And I've had spiritual experiences. I experience intuition. It's part of my experience of being alive. It puzzles me that people argue against that experience. It's like I have that experience, but now I'm going to claim it never happened. You know, it's hard for me to imagine that nobody on the planet has had a spiritual experience at least once in their lives. It would be so sad.
That might fit in with their framework. And there are other ways to explain away things that we experience. I get signals from guides where I get a high-pitched sound in my left ear. Other ways to explain away things. I just get this occasional ringing in my ear, probably because I'm dehydrated.
That's what tinnitus is. I've just been ignoring my guides for the last 20 years, and the ringing just...
News alert, news alert. All kinds of downloads are backed up. Now he's going to go to sleep and he's going to wake up with an encyclopedia of scientific theory being proven. Thanks for spending this time with me on Mediumship Sparks. If this episode resonated with you, please like it, subscribe, rate, and certainly share it with somebody else who could benefit. If you're interested in any support I might be able to provide as you navigate your spiritual path, please feel free to check out my offerings at connectingwithnoel.com and reach out at mediumshipsparkspodcast@gmail.com. Take good care of yourself, and I'll look forward to being with you again soon.